Melissa, thank you very much for sitting down and talking to us. So, first question is, so please introduce yourself and tell me what you do here.
I am Melissa Daniele, and I am the Executive Director.
And so, when you came to the Civic Center, what year was it, and what were some of the first things you were working on?
Well, actually, my history with the Civic Center began in 2002 when I taught here for LCCC first semester. And that was really my first introduction to the building. I became the Director of Operations in 2012, and then in 2013 I became the Director. In 2012, my duties included taking care of all lease agreements and scheduling of facilities, kind of what you might think of as the building management piece of the organization.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about when you were teaching here. What was the experience like of working in this building?
You know, it was a nighttime course, and you know, back in the day, this building was a little scarier, perhaps, than we like to think of it now. You know, I came in the evening and I left in the evening. I struggled to find my classroom every week because I was coming in the dark and only once a week. But I really enjoyed it. I loved the classroom that I was in. LCCC took up the majority of the second floor.
Okay.
So that's all that I was familiar with, which I think is pretty common with visitors to this building. A lot of visitors don't wander around. They get to where they're going, and then they leave.
Right.
So that was definitely my experience
So
teaching.
what were you teaching?
I was teaching Intro to Biological Anthropology,
Okay.
which is my background.
Alrighty.
So, nothing to do with buildings.
So then you came back, and now you're running the place.
Yes.
And I know one of the first projects you were working on was the windows. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So when I came in under the direction of Alex Shea at that point, he had already written a SLIB grant, State Land and Investment Board grant, for $1 million to replace windows in this building. And then, you know, as projects take time, we actually sought an extension for that grant. And so I believe Alec was here when we first started putting windows in, but I saw that project through completion. He had left by the time we completed it. It was a very long, noisy process. But luckily the tenants were great about it. We really tried hard with the contractors not to displace anybody for too long, but taking your windows out in February is cold and very noisy. So, but the tenants were fantastic with it.
So in terms of what kinds of windows you needed to put in and things like that, can you tell me some details about that?
Well, whenever you deal with a historic structure, as we do here, it's really important to try to stay historically accurate as much as possible. Obviously, these are new materials. They're very energy efficient, but they're also, they don't look out of place. When you drive down the street, it doesn't look weird. We don't have the highly reflective windows that you see on some businesses. One thing that we did, we worked with the State Historic Preservation Office, and they recommended that 25% of the project be a refurbishment versus replacement of the windows. So the windows in the gyms and the theater were refurbished, meaning the panes of glass were taken out, the abatement process happened, and then new panes went in with non-asbestos caulking materials and paint. And the other thing is, if you look at the windows along the east side, which is 1926 section of the building, the window openings are in an awning style. And if you look on the 1939 section, they are accordion style openings. And that's also keeping them historically accurate with the windows that were being replaced. And that was at the recommendation of SHPO as well.
I did. You mentioned those years. Can you talk a little bit, just briefly, about the history of this building and how far it dates?
Sure. So it began as the East Side School in 1878. That's the center portion of our building. It was the first stone and mortar schoolhouse in the Wyoming Territory. In 1926, by 1926, it was encompassing all grades, of course, except for the high school students, which had been moved out due to lack of room. 1926, there was an L-shaped addition, which put on what was the only gym in town. It is now the Kinney Sailors Gymnasium. Essentially, the whole north facade of the building is from 1926. So the Kinney Sailors Gym, the front lobby, and the Griffin Theater. And then the majority of the east side in 1939, we completed the full city block that we encompass today. So about 4/5 of the way down, the east side is 1926, but then that last corner, which currently is Interfaith Good Samaritan on the first floor, and the entire south side over to the big gym, also the boys' gym, we call it the South Gym, and that section meets up to the Kinney Sailors Gym. So we are now a complete city block.
So I wanted to mention some of these venues that are here where people can rent them, and that
Sure.
they're functioning venues. Well, first of all, I wanted to ask you about the Griffin Theater. How did that come about, really, the Griffin Theater itself?
Well, it's my understanding that ever since this stopped being a school in 1979, it became the Laramie Plains Civic Center between 79 and 80. What former students, of course, would refer to as our auditorium was still in use by certain factions of the public. Small local theater groups would use it. But it wasn't really until 2010, 2011 when Alex Shea hired David Souls as a theater manager. And that David actually wasn't hired as a theater manager, he was hired as like weekend security. And then we found out his history, and Alex said, "Do you want a theater?" Because we have one. And so the Griffin started there. It started with David Souls and Alex Shea, and the name of it comes from the two Griffin that are on either side of the proscenium arch. They are, to our knowledge, original to the 1939. We don't know why they're a Griffin on either side of the proscenium arch, but they are. It's an 850-seat facility. There is a balcony, which we do open, and it hosts everything from our local preschool programs to international touring musicians. So the gamut of opportunity there, and the public can rent it. So it's a great facility for the community: films, music, theater, preschool programs.
And I know you revamped some things inside the theater, the stage itself, things like that.
Well, yeah, so it's all a labor of love when you're dealing with a historic structure, and it's also a lot of grant writing. So a lot of grant writing has been done to put in new curtains, which meet code, theater and fire codes. Some of the seats have been refurbished. We hope to get more of them refurbished as time goes on. And then the rigging, a lot of the electrical and the stage rigging itself, which the public never sees. It's way up, above the stage. But we've gone from using a very old style of lighting board to everything's computerized at the front of house. So we hope that everybody enjoys the changes. There's still many more to make.
So you mentioned some of the things who are some of the bands or things that have happened here? What are some of the things that come to mind?
Well, obviously the biggest one, and anybody that's been here since 2012 would know that Mumford & Sons was here. And that happened because they had never played Wyoming. They had a day off. And they, we kind of call Laramie the gas stop on tours. A lot of tours will, they'll play in Lincoln, Nebraska or Salt Lake City and have a night off before they hit Denver. So touring musicians don't like to have a night off, at least their management doesn't. So they come here, and it was a fantastic show. We've also Relative Theatrics, which is a nonprofit tenant of ours, run by Ann Mason. She does 5 theatrical runs each year. She's getting ready to do one now, and those are done theater in the round, so that 50 people max sit on stage around the actors. We also get mountain biking and fishing and hunting film festivals. We get Sundance. We get the Manhattan Short Film Festival. There's really a lot for everybody. We also do regular runs of The Big Lebowski every year, complete with costume contests and White Russians at the bar. Ivanson Memorial Hospital rents out our theater every year for a staff appreciation day where they just show films for their staff to come in and enjoy. And their newer releases they get their hands on. So it's a big variety.
I wanted to ask you about the 7th Street Studio and how you got that going.
Absolutely. That's probably one of the most exciting things to come about recently in my tenure. In 2011, Alex Shea signed a memorandum of understanding with the city of Laramie for their pottery equipment. They no longer had the desire to run a pottery studio themselves for the community. So we acquired all of that equipment, including wheels and a kiln and lots of tools and also clay. And then we kind of sat on it for a little bit because we've never run a program for the community. We provide space for other organizations to do that. And none of us know anything about running a pottery studio, nor do we have the time to learn. So we wrote a Wyoming Cultural Trust Fund grant. We wrote a grant to the Etcheper Family Foundation, and we got some donations from local contractors. And we set up this studio. We have what I call the hand building room, which is tables and the equipment. And then there's the wheel room off of that, which has our wheels, our kiln, the slab table. And we started putting it together, and then it sat for a little bit longer until the right person just happened to walk in the door and mentioned that she was an art teacher and she used to teach pottery. And I thought, I have a pottery studio. That's kind of how it happens here at the Civic Center. David, do you want a theater? Right. Kathleen, do you want a pottery studio? But the most important thing about that is that it's for the community. And we've currently written a grant just this summer seeking financial assistance to buy another wheel, but also to offer us a little bit of money to offer scholarships to people. We don't want this to be cost prohibitive. We don't think it is now. But for some, any cost is cost prohibitive. So we've largely been running adult classes, a group of people that have been coming in the mornings. We also have open studio time in the evenings. And this summer we ran our first children's classes. And we're going to have a few more throughout the holiday season.
So it's getting to be popular, huh?
Absolutely, yeah. And of course it's word of mouth and tricks and how to get the word out. But it's been fantastic. It's been exciting to see it develop. My administrative assistant, Kim, is actually the wheel instructor, and it was kind of the opposite. She was the wheel instructor, and then I said, do you want a job? Right. So she happened, that was backwards for her. But that's kind of how it works here.
So, and the another space is the Phoenix Ballroom. I know you're getting that going.
Right. So the Phoenix Ballroom, another grant-based facility, when this was a school, so of course we're talking about the 1939 section of the building, it was the activity room. There's a kitchen off of it, so I believe they did a little bit of cooking. It's not a commercial kitchen, so we can't use it as such now, but every former student that I've spoken to that even remembers the room remembers it as the activity room. And then at some point in the 90s, a church moved into the building and put up some false walls and used those as offices. By the time I came in, Works of Wyoming was in there, the artist incubator run by the Wyoming Women's Business Center. And they were happy there. But then we started the third floor rehabilitation project, and I thought, I would love that room as a ballroom, especially knowing that those walls weren't original to the building. We never take walls down that are original to the building. So we relocated Works of Wyoming to a beautiful space on the third floor with a lot more light for them. And we took down some walls, wrote a Wyoming Cultural Trust Fund grant again to refinish the floor, and threw up some paint. We now have some drapes that are being hung, and it is now a space used by church every Sunday, by yoga throughout the week, wedding receptions, rehearsal dinners, birthday parties, corporate meetings. It's just another space for the community. Anybody can come in and rent that space.
And the naming of it, how did that come about?
The Phoenix Ballroom, we kind of kept a theme. We had a Griffin Theater.
Okay.
We're not, obsessed with birds. But we just thought that it was fitting. Naming facilities is part of the fun, okay. I guess. Some people might not find it fun. But the 7th Street Studio, the Pottery Studio, the entrance is on 7th Street. The Phoenix Ballroom, and we did a lot of searching of the Mountain West, really, of names of ballrooms, because we didn't want to be redundant. And there's nothing like that here.
Okay.
So
Oh,
Just
so
tied
you
it
picked
into the
a good
griffin.
name. It's catchy.
Well, yeah.
Now, the door, the 7th Street studio, the red door, was it a red door or did you paint it red?
No, that's a custom color. That's actually called Civic Center Red.
Okay.
No, when we were setting up that studio, we were trying to be as cost effective as possible with sturdy tables and shelving, but that wasn't going to break the bank, so to speak. 'Cause, it's all grant funded or our operational budget. So I made a trip to IKEA, a couple trips to IKEA, and I spent a lot of time putting together that furniture. But I bought a lot of red stools, and of all the places of the building that can be really fun in terms of color, I thought an art studio was that space. So I took a stool to Sherwin-Williams and I said, "Can you match this?" And they did. So we painted 2 walls inside or 3 walls inside are painted Civic Center red, and we decided to paint the doors.
That's great.
So, yeah.
So we haven't mentioned the gyms yet. Say a word or two about what goes on in there.
Well, we still have what we call the South Gym, which is the bigger of the two, and then the Kinney Sailors Gym. They've gone through many names. The girls' gym, the boys' gym, the small gym, the big gym, the north gym, the south gym. So they are used daily. On Sundays, the Kinney Sailors Gym is used by Whitewater Christian Church, who also uses the Griffin Theater. But every other day of the week, you have the school district and the preschool kiddos using those gyms. You have Kempo Karate, Zumba, Kung Fu, basketball. And the Kinney Sailors Gym is also the only free gym for the public in town. So if nothing is on the schedule and our building is open, that's the catch, the building is open,
Right.
Anybody can come in and use that gym. So it's a great opportunity for parents looking to let their kids blow off a little steam in the middle of winter or inclement weather, come in and shoot some hoops, run around, run amok. The gyms are also regularly used for wedding receptions and other nonprofit fundraisers. So Seroptimist, Hospice of Laramie, their wine gala is coming up. Breakfast with Santa is something we've done for several years now in conjunction with Hospice. It's a fundraiser for them, and that's in the South Gym. We bring in Santa, pancake breakfast, lots and lots of trees.
That's a big event, right? A lot of people.
It's so fun. You would be amazed how a gym can be transformed into something quite magical for children and adults. I always say I wish it was at night, because when you turn the lights off and all the lights are on the trees, it's really beautiful. So we try to actually coordinate. 2 years ago, the night of that event, we actually had a building-wide potluck. And we just had everybody bring in crock pots of food and drinks, and we just turned off the lights and ate by Christmas lights.
That's
It was
nice.
magical. Yeah, it was really fun, and it was a great way to connect with the tenants of the building. They all seemed to really enjoy it. So.
Now, the Kenny Sailor's Gym, that was dedicated, and he was here in person, isn't that right?
He was. We dedicated that 2 years ago, and Kenny was here. Kenny Sailors is a member of the Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, and he went to school here his junior and senior years. He is the originator of the jump shot in basketball. He practiced it in that gym, and he is the very first jump shot taken in competitive play was in that gym.
Wow.
So, it was actually just a thought that came to my mind one day. About, the staff and I were sitting around, and I just thought we should name the gym, and he loved it. He loved the fact that we did it, and luckily enough, he was still with us. He passed, I believe, 10 months later, but he was here. He was very moved by the event, and it was just a great way to honor a former student from this building.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, with all the things that are going on, how do you feel that the Civic Center is serving the community with all that goes on in here, and how does it fit within Laramie?
That's a really great question. We like to think of it as kind of a central hub for the arts in Laramie and nonprofit life. So a big part of our mission is providing affordable rent to nonprofits, kind of taking away some of the overhead burden on them so that they can put their resources where they're most needed. And so we do that, certainly, but we also have 11 bands. I can't even count the number of artists in this building because we have the Works of Wyoming Artist Incubator. We have their fiber studio. The Gem City Art Team, which I believe is now up to 7 artists. The Art Colony is here, plus individual artists are scattered throughout the building. They call this home. And we couldn't be more thrilled. And also in terms of how we reach out to the youth in that capacity, beyond the sports, that take place in this gym, our gyms, you've got Laramie Children's Musical Theater Workshop, you have String Academy of Wyoming, you have Laramie Community Guitar, Evan Cook, who's in a band, also gives drum lessons. Bill McKay teaches banjo. There's just so much opportunity, and those musical opportunities aren't just for children. Obviously, anybody can take guitar lessons or violin. Abundance Creative Arts is one of our newest tenants, and they offer art and music classes as well. So, we really do feel like the place to be if you're an artist and you need a place that is affordable. The problem we have is a good one. We are at 100% capacity. And trying to find more interesting spaces is part of the fun and also part of the challenge. We have a wait list. And the room that we're sitting in now is a project of the Laramie Plain Civic Center Foundation, which is our 501c3 arm of the organization. And it is going to be a co-work space that we're opening shortly. And what that means, if you need a space to come and work a couple days a week at a time, you want to be here all the time, you can do that. The concept of a co-work space isn't new, but Laramie doesn't have one. And we just happen to have what we feel is the perfect space for it. So this room will accommodate, I would say, around 10 people with dedicated desks for those who want to pay for monthly use. But also those people that, maybe they're writers and they work from home, and every once in a while they want to get out and not necessarily chat while they're working, but just be in a room with other people. And, also the people who go to coffee shops every day and maybe they're feeling a little stifled or it's a little too loud. They can come here too. We're not looking to compete with anybody in town. We're not trying to snag all the writers in town, but we want to offer something new, something that we feel is lacking for the community, and it's the work in progress, but we hope to open it very, very soon.
So the last thing I want to ask you is, how do people get in touch with the Civic Center, and what's your presence online?
Well, we have a website with all of our information. The website also has our tenant list. Some of the tenants we've linked to their website, so it's also a good way for people to find them within the building. We are on Facebook and Instagram. I believe we have a Tumblr. We have a YouTube channel. We're here for sure. We certainly aren't hiding, and we're very open to just helping people find a place for their event, or sell them tickets to an event, or help them find a place for them to work. And we also just like to bump into people and give them tours. That happened just this morning. So high school and middle school reunions are a blast. We really look forward to chatting with people and getting their history of the building, which is why it's also nice to talk to the teachers too.
Right.
They have different memories, for sure.
All right, Melissa, thanks so much for sitting down with us.
Thank you.
Okay.